the rented man lift actually sprung a hydraulic leak. And so it's out on the tarmac leaking hydraulic fluid, and the operator at the time thought it would be a great idea so it does not spill onto the concrete. Let's drive over the top of this storm drain.
Welcome to the Canary Report, the podcast where risk leaders, safety professionals, and operational executives come for real-world stories and smarter strategies to keep people safe. I'm your host, Michael Zhao. In each episode, I sit down with exceptional leaders who are transforming how risk and safety are managed. Whether you're a leader of a nationwide EH&S program in a high-risk industry, or you champion workplace safety across 200 retail locations, this podcast is for you. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Canary Report, where risk leaders and safety professionals and operational executives come for real-world stories and smarter strategies on keeping people safe. I am your host, Michael Zhao. I'm the founder and CEO of Yellowbird. And joining us today is Robert Hudson. Now, Rob is a vice president of environmental health and safety for Baker Roofing Company. Now, Rob has an amazing background. He is currently working with one of the largest roofing contractors in the eastern side of the United States. They've got 28 different locations, and that's just on their own internal, let alone all the moving parts they have externally. They have hundreds and hundreds of moving parts at any given point in time. And as we all know, being with a roofing company for 18 years can give you a ton of experience and knowledge and wisdom. Under his leadership, the company has expanded from just a few offices to becoming a major regional powerhouse, and what sounds as though it will eventually be potentially a national powerhouse, has kept the hearts and souls of the people in mind and kept them safe. He has a combined experience of hands-on field work as well as strategic vision, and he is responsible for the souls and the property of over 750 vehicles and many employees, both full-time and part-time. And I thank you, Robert, for coming, and I'm excited to have this conversation. So welcome.
Well, thank you. I very much appreciate you having me. Both excited and a little nervous too. But looking forward to this.
Thank you. And don't be nervous. It's most people are, and it will usually take only about a few minutes of having our chat. And I hope that I put you at ease. I try to start this podcast with the main objective of what we all do in life, which is we keep people and humans safe. And with that, I like to learn about the people that I'm talking to. And so tell me about your life, your family, your upbringing, just your early years, whatever you'd like to share with the listeners. We'd love to hear about Rob as a person.
Okay, so I am a junior, and my oldest son happens to be the third. So that's Robert Wayne Hudson, and grew up very, very close to the coast in eastern North Carolina. Very much enjoyed spending time there. And then with my mother's parents in Wallace, North Carolina, not too far from here. I've always kind of stuck around, about 8 generations, pretty much in the same spot. My family at one point in time owned a bit of land over, I love to tell the story, they owned a little bit of land over on Topsail Island. It was a few years back when my uncle passed away, was a pack rat, and we found a deed of sale he had held on to from 1898, where 100 acres of land on Topsail Island had sold for 12 cents an acre. So rather disappointing to see that the family would do that in hindsight. But I have 4 children, and they are the light of my life. And then I know this does not it's not sexy or glamorous, but I believe in authenticity. So I am currently separated from my wife of 20 years. So life's not all bed of roses sometimes, but there's no need for me to sit here and lie to you.
But I thank you for that. And I don't think that there is anything more important than being authentic and telling people's truths, because that's really what makes for a great leader. And there's nobody who's been married a long time. 20 years is a long time. I've been married 25. Ups and downs and journeys, and good on you guys. And separation is part of the journey at times. And I wish you well, and I wish you both happiness. And and you just never know what's going to end up happening. So with your kids, so you've got 4 kids, and they're the light of your life. So how old are they, and what are they up to?
So my daughter is 17. She's big time into theater, and was very fortunate this past August able to take her to New York to see a show on Broadway. Incidentally, we saw Moulin Rouge, and this dad had no idea what the storyline for Moulin Rouge was prior to seeing that. But I suppose she's exposed to things like that outside of the home anyway. Nothing I can do to prevent.
She unfortunately, we cannot keep them from seeing a lot more than we want them to see. That's for sure.
And then a 14-year-old son and twin boys that are 11. They're lots and lots of fun. The boys are gamers, so I struggle to get them out of the game room there and outside a little bit, but love those boys.
I think that being a gamer is one of the things as a young person that is just a rite of passage. They will eventually find their path to seeing the outside world, and I've found, because I struggle with this as well. I have a 21-year-old and I have a 16-year-old girl. By the way, 16 and 17-year-old girls, you and I must have done something wrong in our lives, in our past lives. No matter how good of a young lady they are, it still will take years off of a dad's life having a young, a teenage daughter.
Yeah, there's an affinity for doing that for a short period of time. We're past that, and we have a great relationship at this point. But yes, that did happen.
Of course. And you know what happened with my son too. My wife talks about this a fair amount, that as they get closer to college age and as they prepare to leave the house, or at least become more of an adult, she says it soils the nest a little bit. They like create these things that create drama, maybe to make it easier for them to leave the house at some point. I don't know if that's clinically a statement or just a comment about how we look at our worlds, but maybe it's just how we make ourselves feel better that this is normal, instead of thinking that we're going to live in strife at times because we're creating it. But who knows? It's probably a combination of the two, if I'm being honest. So on the boys' side, they as gamers have learned how to communicate with their tribe remotely. And I think there is something to that people of our generation and age don't understand, because the remote world is still foreign to us. And when you grow up gaming and communicating with your folks and they team up on things, I learned a whole bunch about this, not because I ever did it well. I'm a person who never says, by the way, that I can't do something. As I mentioned to you before, I'm a one-handed golfer. I was born with one hand and I golf, and I'm pretty decent at it. But I will admit that there are certain things in this world that one-handed people are not ideal to do, and that is game, because it takes 2 thumbs and a couple of forefingers, and without that, it makes it very difficult. So I finally hung up my joystick or my paddle many moons ago, because I was just getting my butt kicked by my son when he was like 9. So anyways, the reason I bring that up is they do build relationships and camaraderie. And yeah, you may not like the concepts of the games, but it does teach you how to communicate over a virtual world, which I think is a powerful thing in today's environment. So going on your journey further, when you were a kid, I imagine you didn't wake up thinking you were going to be the vice president of safety for a large roofing company. So, tell me how you ended up with Baker Roofing, but really the journey that got you here.
And so, by the way, I am still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. So that's the case. And if you'll allow me to digress just a moment, I really do appreciate the sort of the glass half full approach that you had there, and finding the silver lining with the whole gaming process. So kudos to you.
Oh, thank you.
I think I may have shot myself in the foot, because when I digressed, I lost your question there. But growing up, is that right?
No, yeah, growing up, and then when you were a kid, and were you getting out of high school and figuring out your way? How did you end up into your role today? Like, give us just a little Cliff Notes version of your journey.
So how I got here, understood. I always knew that I wanted to be a family man. My dad was a chemist at General Electric for 35 years. And so when I found myself in college, not having decided what I wanted to do, I just kind of followed in those footsteps for a bit. We had exchange students in our home growing up, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. And I was always enamored by the fact that, hey, they were traveling abroad, and I had not been more than maybe 50 miles from my house most of my life to that point. And so I made the decision that I was going to go to South America for an entire semester while attending UNC Wilmington, and I'm going to go learn Spanish. And so I have this kind of unique combination of chemistry and Spanish, and ended up in a lab working, doing drinking water and wastewater testing, kind of giving the local municipalities their report card, making sure the water we're all consuming is safe to drink. And felt like I needed something a little bit more stable. If a friend of mine helped me to find Baker Roofing, and when I joined on with zero experience of safety, much less a foreknowledge of OSHA or any other regulatory body, for that
which we
matter,
have a lot.
we do indeed.
Yes.
And no basic concept of insurance or anything. And they hired me on because I spoke Spanish and I have, a background with chemistry. And they thought, HAZCOM, well, let's bring him on. And so that's where I started my career.
Interesting. So tell us a little bit about the hazardous, communication and hazardous management. And, a lot of people don't understand that in the world, we say there's a lot of things that we're responsible for, and the regulatory body that everybody just thinks of OSHA, but reality is that we cover everything from the DOT and transportation safety and to insurance, as you just mentioned, with loss control and risk, to training and heavy equipment and fall protection, all the way to hazardous materials and that kind of stuff. So I wouldn't have thought of Baker having a HAZCOM need. And what tell us a little bit about that. Like, obviously you would think a roofing company, the natural would be sprains and strains, and fall protection would be the, obvious for anybody who thinks about what the job. But tell us about the things that aren't obvious.
Let me start first with the obvious. I mean, every company that uses any sort of chemical in a process, of course, has to have SDSs available for employees to view, and readily available within a couple of minutes. And if you don't believe me, you'll find out soon at your next OSHA visit, right? Because they'll ask you to produce those within a couple of minutes. But one funny story was the vein of my existence was at our home office. We had an underground fuel tank because we thought it might be cheaper to buy fuel in bulk. And we're, goodness, at this point, we have a rather large fuel bill with 750 vehicles on the road, but it was at above ground and underground. And those things are very, very highly regulated. And it was, when I first got into it, way above my head knowledge. And so the learning curve was quite steep. And I was drinking from that proverbial fire hose. Well, fortunately, we got rid of those things, and I've stepped into the 20th century, 21st century. I would call it a little bit ahead of the future here, but we're using an app now to pay for fuel, and it's the underground storage tanks are someone else's problem.
So, and were those on your own properties?
They were on our own properties. And very early, I'm going to tell you another quick, fun little story. Very early on in my career, we operate forklifts and man lifts, and we work at heights, obviously. And so we were working on a military base. This has been almost 2 decades ago, and the rented man lift actually sprung a hydraulic leak. And so it's out on the tarmac leaking hydraulic fluid, and the operator at the time thought it would be a great idea, so it does not spill onto the concrete. Let's drive over the top of this storm drain.
Oh no.
Oh
no.
That's
right. Yes, sir. So you could imagine.
It's a training opportunity.
Very much so. Very much so.
Wow. And for those who are listening, and I hope there are many that are not safety professionals, that you're just business people, if there's any one thing you take away from that story is if you have any type of chemical, you keep it out of drains, you keep it contained, and you clean it up as efficiently as you possibly can. Because when you get into a drainage system, your situation gets very complex and very challenging regulatorily. So,
Yes, so those
yes,
lovely three initials of EPA will be paying you a
yes.
visit.
Yes, they will. No, it's so interesting you should say that. So, as I always try to weave in some of the complexities of what we do for a living, and I do it knowingly because of what Yellowbird does, it is quite interesting to think about. We do a lot of man lift and forklift training programs. Like we'll do a quarterly program at every facility across the country and very efficiently, that kind of thing. But I do wonder whether or not an add-on to that should be a hazardous materials cleanup protocol. I had never really, until you just said that, you're right, they are hydraulic. They do have fluids. And what do you do if it springs a leak? And are you actually training on that? Is that part of the protocol of normally it's not, frankly, from an OSHA perspective, it's making sure you're tied off, making sure that you know the proper protocols for a safe operation. But that is a very interesting thing that you just brought up. And I would not have thought of it. Like, again, talk about our industry. That is our industry right there. You just gave a perfect example of when people say, well, why is it so hard? I mean, you just have to teach somebody how to do it, run a forklift safely. It's like, yeah, try doing that with 300% turnover and in multiple languages in multiple states.
I imagine every safety professional or business owner that happens to be listening could tell you dozens and dozens of stories like that. And so I would say to the or to the younger safety professionals, just starting their journey, to start writing this stuff down, because those of us a little more tenured, we regret that we have not to this point, because truth is always stranger than fiction.
Oh, it's so true. That's such a great comment and statement. In fact, one of the things that I love about this conversation and about having this podcast is you get these stories that as you say, truth is stranger than fiction. And you get these stories that you wouldn't have otherwise thought of. From that perspective, tell us a little bit about your team and your just internally, the people you have, what you find to be, an area of focus that you wouldn't have thought, that kind of thing. I know that you have about 20 people on your team that are safety professionals, and that's fantastic. How many employees do you have, and locations and all of that stuff?
So we did discuss 28 different locations, and there are about 1,150 or so direct employees. We also have a substantial subcontractor base. Most of our service and repair work we do in-house, but with subcontractors, you have to pre-qualify all of those prior to bringing them on board. You want to make sure that they're going to be committed to the same cause, safety, of their employees, obviously, and the protection of people and property. In addition to that, and maybe we don't want to get in the weeds here, but we have to make sure they're very well insured. Obviously, if there's a gap in their insurance, then you're going to end up eating it on your insurance. And so it's kind of sad to know that you paid a professional to carry insurance, and then you get dropped 3 years down the road, 4 years down the road with a construction defect claim or something of that nature, if you happen to be named on that. But back to my team, because I am particularly proud of them. I did not get here, or Baker did not get here alone. That is for certain. And so, there 16 of them are actually safety professionals that very, very well tenured. Some of them cut their teeth here, but I've not lost a safety professional in about, I think my latest hire was 3 years ago, and we've got very little turnover within our department, and it's a wonderful blessing. But those
Awesome.
guys are,
Yes.
board of certified safety professional accredited. I've got CSPs,
Yep.
DSP,
Mhm.
CHSTs, and
Yep.
and all the lovely acronyms, right? But
Yes,
I think that
yes.
adds credibility and professionalism to them. And we ask a lot of this team, and every single day they rise to the challenge and are doing just a phenomenal job. We'll do 99% of all of our training in-house. We even
Yeah.
build our own training programs. We're working currently on an extra ladder initiative, just because we probably
Right.
have 2 million trips up and down a ladder a year.
Right.
And
Yep.
that is minimum. That's a big exposure and a
It
lot
is.
of opportunities for something to go wrong. So
Yes.
one of the recent ones we did was just skylight training certifications, and I don't get too far in the weeds. It was I know some of
Sure.
I'm anticipating some of your questions coming up, and I'll have more to follow with that. But we are building our own training out just to be able to pull a trailer, to be able to access a roof with a potential skylight on it. I don't want you going up unless you're certified.
That is fantastic. It's funny because I think what you're going to anticipate what you anticipate's different than what I'm going to say. See, a lot of folks believe, no, it's okay. I love that. But it could be exactly what I'm going to say. I can't read your mind. But that being, I wish I could. I think that
would
is
make the safety profession quite a bit easier now, wouldn't it?
Would it ever? Would it ever? You look over there and you're like, oh man, don't do what you're thinking about doing right there. As they're sitting there. That'd be awesome. But no, unfortunately, have not. Maybe that'll be my next company. I got to come up with that technology and figure out how to do that one. That being said, I don't believe that you can outsource a safety culture. And I don't think that you can outsource core curriculum of what it takes to be a safe operator within your organization. And people are like, what? Wait, you're in the business of doing that? And I said, no, actually, I'm not. The number one thing that we focus on is making sure that we get our professionals to understand your training. If somebody really wants proper Baker roofing training, they need to use a Baker roofing protocol and process. And there is no way that I can bring on, and I don't care if it is the most seasoned safety professional with 30 years of experience and head of training for XYZ, they don't know your business. They know it as well as they know any business, but your business is yours. It's personal, it's people, it's process. You need to know the I always call it kind of the tribal knowledge of your company. And so what my goal is always to do is keep your 6-figure employees from having to live on airplanes to go train a 15-person training, and have them focused on the results of the training test or the results of the program, so that we can take your 20 people and make them as powerful as 200, instead of the other way around, which is make them try and do the work of 200, which is where our industry has been. You burn people out on airplanes and cars. And so I just think it's fascinating. Have you found, when you do outsource, and you've been there 18 years, there's been moments and circumstances you've outsourced it, so I don't have to ask the question. But when you do you find that your contractors or subcontractors are open to using your materials, or do they always want to use their own? And so you have to make a decision around that.
So the few times that I have, let's call it, farmed out any sort of safety training, it's typically their materials. And I will say that whenever I have a newer safety professional, until I kind of have to watch them. I can't just turn them loose, doing, for example, crane and rigging training. They need lots and lots of exposure to that, and their hands held, by another more seasoned veteran before I turn them loose with something like that. But if we outsource it, say a forklift or a man lift, I don't demand necessarily that they use Baker roofing content, as long as it's OSHA compliant. I can have my local superintendents or project managers correcting things on the job site as they're supposed to, in the event something is it's all going to be OSHA compliant, but OSHA compliance is kind of bare minimum. So we may have some
Exactly.
additional safety measures that we want these guys to sort of deploy whenever,
Yes.
let's just say a man lift or forklift train. Or I should be calling it MEWP. All of my safety professionals that are listening are going to, he's not saying it right.
It's so funny you should say that, because I actually had even on forklift, I had somebody correct me with the proper name of oh God, now I'm going to put myself in a bind. It's just not coming back to me.
So the rough terrain forklift, or
so digressing and continuing on from that, what I would love to understand is how you are tracking and managing and looking at you've got 1,100 full-time, you've got all these contractors coming in. You mentioned insurance. Are you responsible? Is that part of your purview, Rob, to make sure that all of the insurance compliance and pieces are also done? Is that actually part of it within your realm, or do you have somebody else internally that does that?
of course, I do have a team, but it largely falls underneath my umbrella. One of my mentors, Ron Adams, recently retired this past January, and he was sort of that risk manager. And I'm a long time in the insurance business, and I owe a lot of my knowledge to him. But yes, the insurance renewals I do handle. I suppose I could tell you about us moving out of the guaranteed cost program about a year and a half or so ago and into a group captive. Lots of things to talk about there, but yes, I manage claims, the insurance program, and as well as operational safety, and that might be policy changes or development and implementation. And so yeah, it's a pretty wide purview, and it also includes fleet safety.
Yes, it's so interesting you should say that. I think it's fascinating and important that our listeners understand when somebody says, "Oh yeah, I run safety for a roofing company," or "I'm the head of EHS for a roofing company." They're like, "Oh, okay, you gotta just make sure everybody's doing the safe stuff and compliance." And then when you just in this conversation, you just touched on your fleet, which, by the way, for anybody who is in the safety industry, or the number one most dangerous thing that any organization does is have their people driving on the roads. There is zero question about that. It's a tenfold risk to anything else. And it's never counted.
One in four workplace fatalities is going to happen on the highway.
Yes, unfortunately. And that is, and it's not only is it really a startling statistic, but it's also a statistic that in safety people don't, they never put it under the safety team. So like if you ever look at some of the statistics around the National Safety Council, they do a wonderful job. They've been tracking this stuff for ages, but vehicular, safety incidents are never part of that. And so it's always fall from heights or confined space when you look at what the number one issue in safety is for a, injury record. But the reality is that driving is actually the number one. Sadly enough. And so we're responsible for that. Distracted driving, training, making sure that people have their protocols. Insurance, as you mentioned, insurance investigation, loss control surveys. We're doing a massive amount of loss control surveys and inspections right now because the safety teams have to be able to go out with an insurance eye to be able to do a site walk to see whether or not when we come up with renewal, whether we're a captive or whether or not we actually go to a direct insurer, that we're doing the right things. So it's you bring up such a really valid and interesting point about how difficult it is to do the jobs that we do, and what is our number one priority, and that's the hardest point because everything we do is important, right? Like there's no part of safety that isn't important. Right.
That's right.
So what is your, I didn't mean to go on a diatribe. That wasn't even a question. So what kind of host am I? You're like, yes, that's true.
You're welcome to hop on your soapbox at any moment. Sorry.
Let me hop back off of it.
Sorry. So go ahead with your question. I apologize.
What were you going to say? I got to hear it now.
I think that, any good safety professional is always ready with his stump speech. So
yes,
great with you kind of carrying on there. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate it. So you're not an old man, but you're certainly not at the beginning of your career. And as you start thinking about, the next 10 years, what are you thinking your journey is going to look like, either through retirement or after retirement? Is there something that you're passionate about that you want to spend your time doing, that you want to share with our listeners, both inside of work on a legacy but also outside of work?
That makes me think of about 12 years ago when I first, 13 years ago now, when I first kind of assumed this role as VP of VHS. One of the things that my boss at the time, who incidentally still the same guy, folks come to Baker, we stay a long time, but he challenged me with how can you shorten the learning curve for a new professional getting into the business. And so that's kind of been really a big focus is to we might find someone who is maintaining their integrity, which is, if without integrity you can't be a safety professional. Someone who can build relationships, and if you have people skills and you have integrity, I think in spite of what a big deal we like to make of this profession, it can be learned. If I learned it, it can be learned. So we like to, what I like to do is, and I've got a team member who has this affinity for mentoring folks. And so that's one of my favorite things is to build new professionals, on our team. So as we grow, and as we expand the size of our department just to keep up with the demand, is how we shorten the learning curve for them. And then, so I want to treat them so well and train them up so that everybody around is trying to steal them, but treat them so well that they won't want to leave. And so the idea is, as we advance towards retirement, is not to become, I don't like the word irreplaceable, because there's tons of folks out there that can do it. It's just, my thought process is, I want to make my absence felt once I leave, like make such an impact where your absence is felt.
It's such a great way of looking at that from a legacy perspective. I find that a lot of people say that they don't want to be irreplaceable, and the reality is you don't want to be irreplaceable. In fact, if you want to have a great team, they should be able to step into your shoes. And as we unfortunately know all too well in the safety world, things can happen. And you want to leave an organization better than you found it, and whether it's today or whether it's 20 years from now. And one of the principles that I've always stayed true to when starting this company, and we're only 6 years old, we're not nearly as seasoned as Baker is, but it's having a centralized repository for your history, and just knowing that, hey, I had this trainer that did this thing, and who was in that training, and when did that happen, and or did they show up, and do I have to chase people down, and things like that. But there's also just all these little nuances. And one of the things that I found is that when people like you and I retire, the companies that we work for end up wanting us to pull us back in as consultants, because you have so much tribal knowledge. And part of that is also kind of bad on us for not preparing to exit where people are better off than we found them. And you don't have to call me for a consulting, because you're ready. You know where to find things. You know what our protocols are. You're documenting.
Yeah.
Like, so many people who hoard, and I think it's a dangerous philosophy, particularly in
100%.
safety.
We need to get out of that mindset, is that you want to grow folks underneath you, because they're not going to push you out. They're going to push you up. And so if we're hoarding our knowledge, my goodness, that is what pushes you out, right? When you don't play well with others, so to speak.
It's funny. I have a lot of folks, particularly on the investment community, ask, we're doing really well. I'm very, very blessed. We recently did over 200 sites and in like 27 states, and we did it in days, not months. And it was a really good accomplishment, and I'm proud of it. And it's the first time I could say that the platform did exactly what it was supposed to do at the scale I wanted it to do it. 251 locations in 71 days is a lot of moving parts that we were able to do without the customer having to do anything, which was awesome. But that being said, the number one question I have is, well, how long are they going to make you stay if you get acquired? Some big guy's going to come along and want you guys to buy you up, and they're going to make you a number you can't refuse and all that other stuff. And first of all, I'm not in a hurry for that. I'm not going anywhere. Like, I love what I do, and I go up to talk to you, Rob, and everybody, and I love to do this podcast, and I'm not going anywhere. But what I don't want to do is have this place completely not able to run without me also, because when that happens, and it will happen eventually, I don't want golden handcuffs. I don't want to have to stay as an employee for a company for 3 years because the place can't run without me. It's like, I think that's actually freeing for everybody if you just let that go and say, I can go on vacation and the world's okay. I can sell the business and some other person can be running it, and that's okay. Like, it's such an interesting mindset. I agree with you wholeheartedly that, I think it's a control thing that I don't know if the younger generations have it as much, but I know people of our generation have it a lot. It's like, don't want to use other people because I want my people and my control and my stuff. And that's sometimes a very dangerous and risky thing. So
I've learned some very good lessons around that over the last couple of years. We have a monthly corporate-wide safety committee, of which there are attendees in each location and department throughout the entire company. And I've been running that for 10 years, and I had one person that sort of helped me with a little bit of the content, and would sit down and try my best to deliver a good product for folks. And as my role sort of changed a little bit and more responsibility, I found that, gosh, I can't get everything done myself anymore, right? And so I went to a sort of a committee-based approach, because those guys that I'm about to ask something of, they're all very busy. But if I form a committee around this, right, that's the workload on each one of those is less. And so when I stepped back and relinquished control of that, they started one heck of a good work product. They have for the last 8 months gotten better every single time and have blown me away. And actually, a little humble pie, they're doing a better job than I ever did.
I think that is a testament to your leadership. It is no need to be humble, because it actually is a brag that you are willing to do that. And that's actually a good thing. My belief is that the only way to get truth is to have different eyeballs. And, I commonly speak about this of, that there's a moment that you have your kids have the neighbor say, hey, why do you always have your stuff on the grass out there? And they're like, oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Jones. And they go and pick it up and they clean it right away. And you're like, I must have told you to do that 50 times and you've never done it. But as soon as Mr. Jones comments, all of a sudden, oh yeah, I'm listening. I'm on it, sir. And it's almost the same with the Snoopy and the Peanut Gang's teacher. Want. It's like, over time, people stop listening to the same voices, and you kind of need to change those voices just to have impact. And it doesn't mean you need to fire people. It just means you just need to have different people doing different things, like switching it up.
And when you do that, Michael, you allow them to actually develop skill sets that they would otherwise not have attained. And so you are growing the skill sets and growing your team in that fashion. So we can think of a ton of positives there.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And by the way, I have no idea the answer to this question. Are you guys actually doing work with us? I don't actually know if you're a customer.
I'm actually talking to a couple of different people. I have a meeting scheduled actually early next week. Just briefly as to why is I do have a travel department, and on occasion, a full-time safety professional is required on site. Some of my past projects, I've actually been able to handle that internally, but I've got several things coming up that I won't be able to. And so I do like if I may kind of tell, when you and I first spoke, I think you said, and I'll butcher this, but the Uber of safety, something to that effect. And so I was fascinated by the concept of, you have somebody likely, within an hour or so, of where our job site is. And so there's opportunity for cost savings, when it comes to that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Was not a setup, everybody, but I appreciate that so much, because one of the things, I mean, it sure felt like one, but it really wasn't. I had no idea. So thank you for that. One of the things that I'll say is that we have about 7,000 people and growing on the platform that are registered. It doesn't mean that they're all working at all times. It means that they've made themselves available. You talk about the future, Rob, of retirement land, and you're like, I'd be available to do a walkthrough or a training if somebody wanted me to do it, but I certainly don't want to run a training program, and I don't want to incorporate, and I don't want to run my own insurance, and I don't want to all the things. But you want me to show up, do a training, and get paid? Sure, I can do that. And so you have to, in order to do that, you have to have people willing to do that. And I have found that you're speaking my language when you talk about this, because often you either need somebody for a short duration of time, and you're like, oh, I gotta go interview and hire and all this stuff for somebody for a project that's 60 days. Well, that's not going to be very conducive. Or you get a weird request from like your insurance company. Hey, I want you to have a safety person on site 2 days a week for the project. It's a year-long project, but 2 days a week. It's like, what the heck am I going to do with the person for the other 3 days each work week for 2 years? It's like, it's a difficult deal. So thank you for that. And I hope we can serve. And if for some reason we can't, I'd love to hear from you on, what the experience was, either good or bad. It's just important that we learn, what worked. So thank you for making that comment. So as we wrap up, I want to ask you a personal just interest question. When you're not doing your 60 hours a week as a safety leader, which most of us are, what are you doing with your spare time? What do you do with your free time? Do you have any sports or hobbies or anything that you enjoy doing?
I am an avid gym goer. So every morning, maybe between 5 and 5:30, I'm at the gym. I don't sleep much more than about 6 hours, so I find myself waking up fairly early in the morning, and that's kind of my passion here. That's been something that's helped me. I think mentally, physically, emotionally, all things considered. Unless you go and create that routine, I don't think you'll ever know the impact that can have on you. But I will go ahead and confess, just prior to the whole, can I say the COVID? Can I say the C word there?
Sure.
Hopefully that's long behind us. Right before COVID hit,
it was a big part of our world.
Yeah. It was indeed. It changed a lot. It certainly changed the landscape of a safety professional and how we delivered training. But I was about 280 pounds, and
really
very much overweight. 4 pills a day with from just to control my blood pressure. And so I started a journey very, very slowly at first, just a few habit changes that eventually, yielded some results, and those results sort of snowballed into, goodness, that was a little bit of, that wasn't very difficult. What else can I do? And so gradually, I ended up from sedentary, 4 pills a day to no more medicine. I am no longer sedentary, and I'll go to the gym, I don't know, 4 to 7 days a week. So I like to do that. I like to fish. And of course, spending time with my children, and we love movies and board games. And, but I would have to say the thing that I am the absolute most passionate about is cooking. I may have a slight problem because I have used restaurant equipment, a big deep fryer, one of the griddles from a Japanese steakhouse, of course a smoker, and I love it. I love to feed people, and it's that I get just a ton of joy watching people eat it. So
That's fantastic. I think that is a beautiful thing, and I think it says a lot about you as a human being, because somebody who likes to host and somebody who likes to make things for people and enjoy watching them enjoy them and so forth has a spirit of giving and caring. And that's the one thing I found in our industry is across the board, universally, not a single person I've had on this podcast has not been a genuinely heartfelt person who cares deeply for the people that they take care of. And it does not surprise me one bit that is your passion and why you need to be in the gym for 5 to 7 days a week, because I imagine that, I'm fortunate not a very good cook, and I'd probably be very large if I were. So it would be, my issue is I don't eat enough most of the time. And it is actually an issue. It's my wife and my employees here give me a lot of grief. So they're like, I'll have people literally drop off lunch on my desk because they're like, I've noticed the last 3 days you didn't get up for lunch. I do that. So well,
Well,
thank
if you ever
you,
find
Rob.
yourself in Eastern North Carolina, I'll make you the best smash burger you've ever had.
Well, you got yourself a deal, and then you can teach me. We can go out to a fishing hole, because the one thing I am really enjoying these days. I'm a golfer, as I mentioned, but I love the outdoors, and I realize the reason I love to golf so much is because for somebody who lives in Phoenix, Scottsdale area, there's a lot of places outside, but mostly there's a lot of it's suburban, and so when you get on a golf course, they're well maintained, they're beautiful. You're walking around, you're hitting a little golf ball, and I'm trying not to swear too much and get frustrated, but it's a walk in the park. And I'm now trying to find other ways to walk in the park without losing my mind on a golf course. So you could teach me how to fish when I come out to visit, and I will. I appreciate that offer. So thank you. Well, Rob, thank you so much for this. I appreciate you, your time, the fact that you're even talking to us about helping you out. Thank you for that. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, that's okay too. But thank you for being on the show.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I've really enjoyed it. And good to talk to you. It was and honestly good to know that your business exists. I think it's a really cool model, and as I learn a little bit more, and it's all kind of fresh for me, so I'm sure there are things that I don't know just yet, and we will continue this relationship.
I love it, man. Thank you, Rob. That's it for today's episode of the Canary Report. If this conversation helped you reframe how you think about risk and safety, please do me a favor. Hit subscribe, leave a review, and share it with somebody who needs to hear it. We're building a new category of safety and risk leadership, one that's faster and smarter. Leaders who aren't just empowered by tech, but whose wisdom is accelerated by it. To learn more about how Yellowbird's cutting-edge platform is empowering leaders to solve workplace safety and risk challenges faster, smarter, and at scale, visit goyellowbird.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Yellowbird pages to stay up to date. Until next time, lead with clarity, know first, and act fast.